Go ahead, get started. Um, for those of you that don't delve too much into context clues, I'm battling a cold, um, burning cane around the house, and every fall when that happens, I get the chit. So I'm going to do my best. I'm going to try to speak up a little closer to the microphone. But we're going to start off with the PowerPoint of the muscles of the trunk. But I want to preface, when we look at these muscles in motion, we have to remember this is just showing you how they're pulling. Or if you want to default, because some of these don't make sense, this would be if they were working concentrically. But when I say some of these don't make sense, you're going to see the first one, the external obliques doing this to the trunk. And it's like, well, if I'm standing up and I do that, that's my erector spinae. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's just showing you the direction of pull. These muscles pull in the direction of flexion. So it's showing you that, not saying they're working to cause this motion. Hey, good morning. Sharp, sharp, sharp. Feel some ZZ Top needs to be played. Da, 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 da. Guys, look at how the external obliques work together. Now, this is just an artist's rendition. The obliques have a little bit more obliquity, a little bit more angles to it. But notice how it's not only pulling on the ilium on the sides, but also getting into that tendinous inscription. So remember, this is how right and the left are working together. For those of you watching at home, on PowerPoint, right and left external obliques working together. They're going to cancel out transversely. They're going to cancel out frontally and work together sagittally. Now let's look at one at a time. How right pulls right lateral. It's still pulling in a direction of flexion sagittal. This is just showing you the frontal pull. This is a better angle of showing you how the right external is a left transverse, but I think we're going to get to that one. Yeah, selection. Now, this is where context is important. I'm going to turn the camera just to make sure everybody's seeing the same picture. This video, right, is accentuating its pull away from anatomical. That's what I mean by that. Notice how that play, it like magically starts off being twisted to the right. Because it's showing you how it has pulled back to the left, but it also can pull you across all the way to the left. Right oblique. Stop it. We saw you right level. Pulls to the left transverse. So when you see it go back to the right, it's just resetting. It's just resetting, because that muscle can't push you to the right. The muscle can't push you across. It can pull you over. The mirror opposite. The left lateral. And then again, you're going to start already twisted to your left to emphasize how the left external is pulling you right transverse. It can't push you back. It's just resetting it. Does that make sense? Some people are more visual. Right? Let's look at the internals. Together. Follow my cursor. The externals ran posterior to anterior. These run anterior to posterior. They can pull your ribs back. Makes sense. And notice, maybe this gives you a better visual of what I was trying to explain to you last week. The right internal has the same line of pull as the left external. Transversely. Transverse. Same thing, just on the other side. Videos are just to show you how they pull. There's no contraction context here. In fact, if we were doing crunches, it would be working both to bring you here and to let you go back down. It's just to show you their direction. See if we make left side separately. So I like to think of it as a teeter-tot. And so your xiphoid process is kind of like your axis. You have one side of the teeter-totter and the other side. Right's going to pull right ladder, left's going to pull left ladder. Both of them are going to. When we get into do this, when we get into practice exercises, the teeter-totter is a good analogy because you could have a dumbbell on this side, but if the dumbbell's trying to bend you to your right, you know you got to use something that's pulling back to the left. So it's not necessarily the muscles on the same side of the dumbbell. So it's the way I had a student do this for a senior project. So to me, the best way to look at it is, we know from our lecture in 310, needing the erector on the right side for this exercise. So I want you to pay attention to like the right, obviously all of the erectors are on that slide, but the ones at the bottom are going to be beige. So kind of starting out more on the inside and branching out to the outer ribs. Does that make sense? So that's kind of how it's working. It's literally pulling the ribs transversely to line up with the midline. Get them my nervous. And we talked about the transverse abdominis being more of a interthecal pressure, like your tummy's creating a house, creating a rigid link so that we can transfer forces from up and bottom, stabilizing the lumbar. But in terms of motion, it just goes from spine to spine. Let's get into some practice. I think I have have some good, some fun ones for us to get. Right, guys, as always, I'm going to give you the exercise. Y'all recognize this one? Okay. And I would love for us to practice our process. Practice the process. Instead of going straight to the muscle, what are the external forces trying to do? What then must my muscles be trying to do? Who do I need to call? Who do I need to innervate? Who do I need to activate to do a job? On the first test, it was just isometric. This one, we're going to give some motion to it now to practice our contractions. So the first thing is identify the muscles at the trunk to hold this position isometric. This was on your first test. Once you identify your agonistic group of pull, then all you got to do is say, well, who pulls that way? Who are the muscles that pull that way? Now, just my 2 cents. When you get into contractions, forget about the individual muscles because most of them don't have pull in their name. There's Latin for stuff, mostly. When it comes time to do contractions, bring it back to pull. So now we can say these muscles pull this way, and when I see motion that way, concentric. These muscles pull this way when I see motion the other way, eccentric. Does that make sense? So what I'm trying to show you or emphasize, just in my opinion, as a teacher, I don't care how you teach it, I just want you to get it right. Identify who's working based off of pull. Then you can say the individual muscles are, when it comes time to figuring out, identifying or answering contraction, right external, left internal, that I want you to bring it back here. I want you to bring it back to the pull so that we can do the A and C. These muscles that pull this way are going to do motion this way, do this contraction. These muscles are going to do this way. Does that make sense? Right. What's my agonist group? Who do I need to recruit to do a job here? Do I need my right laterals or my left laterals? This too shall pass. I need my left laterals. I need the muscles on my left side. Gravity in the ground is trying to bend me to the right. If I had a remote control and I turned off all of his muscles and his center of mass dropped down and his elbow stayed on the ground, wouldn't his right shoulder get closer to his right hip? It's called right lateral trunk bending. Grounding gravity is trying to bend him to his right. He doesn't need muscles that do that. In fact, if he was here and he used those muscles, he'd literally pull his elbow from the ground. Make sense? That's the hardest part. Identifying the group is the hardest part, and you've been doing it for 2 semesters. The easy part is, who are the left laterals? That's the easy part. But when it comes time to contraction, bring it back to the group. So in other words, he lowers himself down from this position. That would be right lateral trunk bending when he goes down. Left lateral pullers allow right lateral bending through eccentrics. And when he comes back up, left lateral benders do left lateral bending through concentrics. You see how I want you to do this? Now again, if you have a different method and it's getting you right answers, it's like telling somebody they got an ugly swing but they're batting 380. You do you. But if you're batting 180, let me work with you. Let me help get that batting average up. Maybe. Any questions before we move on to the next one? It's time, I promise I'm going to give you more time. Here, there's a court. It's like we live in puberty. From here, from this position, we have to establish external forces. That rubber band is not pushing him. That rubber band is pulling. From here, you observe right transverse trunk rotation. You should be able to tell me the specific muscle and through which specific contraction that would happen. What I'm trying to emphasize is once you identify the specific muscles, cool. But when it comes time to go to contraction, bring it back to the group. Bring it back to the group name because that's going to remind you how they're pulling. So if you see motion in that direction of pull, got to be concentric. If you see motion in the opposite direction of pull, it has to be eccentric.
To the other side. It'll be a better view.
Guys, I just my 2 cents again. I've been doing this for a long time. Have a conversation, and if you don't, I understand. Grace and I can go walk around. This is how you learn. Because if you get the same thing, awesome. But if you don't, awesome. If you don't get the same answer, great. You can have a conversation about why you got what you got, and we can learn. This is a better view. Tough time getting where that TheraBand is put. Or you can see it. So the TheraBand is pulling this way. Where does that up? Good Lord. Trust. Right, this is what I'm going for us to do. That cable is pulling to your left. True. Okay. If you are willing and able, I think this will really help. Stand up and have a partner or someone next to you, Grace, if you could float around. Have someone literally pull on your hands, put your hands in this position, and have someone tug on them to the left so that you can feel the muscles that you're using to resist it. Do me that favor. First of all, probably. Want you to do it one more time. This is what I want you to do. So you gotta sort of feel from that. Those we do and really show the muscles that are using it. Really show, let it go. And that'll really show you, while I'm trying to twist you to the left, you have to be using muscles that pull into the right. Does that make sense? One more time. Sit, and then let go. See how you want to work it.
And again.
So, if you observe right transverse trunk rotation, first of all, what's my agonist? Do I need left pullers or right pullers transversely?
Right.
Right. You know who those muscles are. Bang, 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 bang. Who's pulling to the right? Left external, right internal, right erector. But when it comes time to contraction, that doesn't help line up with muscle pull, motion, contraction. So bring it back to I need right transverse pullers. So if I see right transverse motion, that has to be concentric contraction. Does that make sense? If he lets it go to the left, same muscles pulling back to the right are going to let the motion happen to the left through eccentrics. He's going to make it go across to the right and let it go back to the left. Same muscles. The different motions isn't because of different muscles. The different motions because of different contraction. You've heard me say that several times, but we got to hear it over and over. All right, this one's on you. This is going to have different. Oh God, come on, you this. This is going to have different parts to it. The first question, A to B, and then to make it simple, we're going to go back to A and go A to C. Because obviously, to go from B to C, he's got to pass back through the middle. Does that make sense? He's got to come back through the middle. So two separate questions, A to B, and then go back to A as a starting point, and then go A to C. You should be able to tell muscles, specific muscles, and then specific contractions from which those muscles make those motions. Sure. Once you get your answer, it could even be from A to B first. Have that conversation. Have that conversation. Make sure you're on the same page, and then maybe go to A to C.
I was looking at function extension and transverse
Oh,
rotation.
one of the great questions. I just want the rotation. because that's the one that's most, we can look at it and say, hey, those extensors are maintaining that position, right? But in terms of what's the most movable piece, we're looking at the rotation. So thank you for that clarification. Very, very important. I didn't get that. That's on me. So yeah, we're looking at rotators, rotation stuff. But there is a fun little subtle emphasis conversation we're going to have after we identify those numbers. Right. Let's move this up. I want to get to a couple more examples. So from A to B, left transverse trunk rotators. Cool. And those would be right external, left internal, left erector spinae. Now, this is the first example where we can start kind of looking into who's working more. Even though we identified the major muscles that are working in this group, our erector spinae now not only is creating rotation, but isometrically it's working to maintain a position sagittally as well. Does that make sense? So it's not to say those obliques aren't helping. It's that left erector spinae would be working two jobs. That left erector would be working more because not only is it helping you twist, but it's keeping you from falling. It's kind of different. A to C would be the right transverse. Those muscles would be left external, right internal, right erector. Lowering it back down would be the same muscles, just through eccentric contraction. So if I went from A to B, and then I went back from B to A, it's the same exact muscles. The left transverse pullers are going to allow right transverse rotation through eccentrics. That's why I like to bring it back to agonist, because it has pull in its name. And then from C back to A, my right transverse pullers are going to allow the left transverse through eccentrics. So this is an example of an entire range of motion hidden by the same muscles. because the external force is going to change when we get past the midline.
So just to clarify,
Oh, great question. It's causing the rotation, but if I'm keeping my spine from flopping over sagittally, it has to work isometrically to hold that sagittal position. You're welcome. I didn't use the words well enough. Thank you for asking me to clarify. It's working two jobs. It's working sagittally and transverse. So if someone was having some erector problems, we may want to hold off on something like this until we get present. Okay. Right. Are y'all ready for a more complex one? I'm sure y'all are. Y'all like, come on, Cam, these are getting too easy. Give me something. How about this one? Now let's look at context clues. First of all, the upper extremity is going to be fixed and it's going to be rotating the pelvic girdle. So therefore the trunk will be rotating, just not traditionally. Step two is, I know for a fact this is her start position. If you've ever done these machines before, you could reposition them to choose if you want your knees to point to the left or your knees to point to the right, or start in the middle. I know this is her start position because all the plates are stacked. They're not separated. Does that make sense? So now that we have the context, this is the start position. Once she starts moving, the machine is going to be trying to bring her back to this initial start position. Logical? Okay. She starts here and she will undergo right transverse pelvic girdle rotation against that resistance. Giving you that information. She's going to undergo right transverse pelvic girdle rotation against that resistance. We have to bring it back to the trunk because pelvic girdle rotation could happen because of hip muscles or trunk muscles. But only trunk muscles can do trunk motion. So that's why we bring it back to the trunk. We have to ask ourselves, what would the machine be doing to her trunk? Then identify those muscles. Does everybody understand the question? We've set it up where we understand what the machine is trying to do to her. I've given you the initial motion of the pelvic girdle. Bring that back to the trunk and identify me the muscles that would be moving her from here to there. Go. One of the good things to have these machines is that the limitations of that first exercise we did is right. It's impossible to go through an entire range of motion working the same muscles when gravity is trying to push you this way on this side, that way on the other side. So a machine like this can produce an external force throughout a whole range of motion. So that you can work to see muscles through the whole range of motion. It's one of the positive things about these types of machines. But it can also be trunk machines too, where you get in and move to the top throughout a whole range of motion. It's just gravity is limited. Gravity is We'll wrap it up on this conversation. If somebody came to me and had $100 bill and said, tell me which obliques are working in 5 seconds, I'd be like, give you money. Because I gotta figure that soon. I can answer it, but it may not be 5 seconds. That's my point. Let's say you're in a clinic and you're trying to work a specific oblique, you're trying not to work a specific oblique, indicated, contraindicated. We gotta know which one you're working so that we know how to set the machine. That's what we're working for. Alright guys, let's do it because I got one more I'd love to get to. So what position does her trunk start off in? How is she twisted when she starts? She's twisted to her standing. So that means the initial movement is going to be left transverse trunk. That also means the machine is trying to cause right transverse trunk. Does that make sense? If the machine is trying to twist her trunk back to the right, I don't need muscles that try to twist her trunk to the right. I need muscles that are twisting her trunk to the left. I need the left transverse trunk rotators. Who are those muscles? Right external, left internal, left erector spine. Think of it like this. Traditionally, we say, I need my left transverse to bring my right ribs to my left hip. All we're saying here is, I need my left transverse to bring my left hip closer to my right ribs. That's all we're doing. We're saying, this muscle can do this. These muscles can also do that. Let's do another thought experiment. Let's say she has right transverse pelvic girdle against resistance. The machine's trying to bring her back. So she's here. She relaxes her muscles. Bang! That's going to happen. What motion is that? Right transverse trunk. The machine is trying to twist her trunk to the right. So I don't need muscles that are trying to twist her trunk to the right. I need muscles that are trying to twist her trunk to the left. Here's another way to look at it. Muscles that are trying this are also trying to do this.
So it's always the opposite, the trunk and the always.
Cap and bottom. Cap and bottom. Absolutely. If you were going to open up your, does it spin? To open, you could either spin the cap this way, but you could also open it by spinning the bottle the other way. You get the same motion. So from here to there is the same motion as here. All right, guys, look, similar question, but maybe this one will help because it has a traditional before and after. Now, we don't assume, I didn't make this picture, but I would not have made it if I did, because the picture on the left is actually the plate separated, and it's actually, you actually moved it, you actually concentrically moved to get to that. That's not a starting position of the exercise. You wouldn't walk into it with the plates already separated. That makes sense? The starting position of the exercise is actually on the right, because the plates are together. he went into that machine with his trunk twisted so that his muscles can untwist it. Does that make sense? So for this question, because of that, I want you to start here and then tell me which muscles got him there. How was his trunk twisted on the right? Don't answer it. And then he's in anatomical. But that doesn't mean those muscles aren't working. If the muscles aren't working to prevent him from going back to where he started. Yeah, that hips, one of the hips would move like that. Keep your shirt would stay the same position. When you bring it. The exercise, maybe not at the beginning, maybe not at the start, because when you get into the start, the machine's not trying to make it. But during that range of motion, 99% of those positions, the machine is trying to bring you back to where you saw, which would be left transverse trunk rotation, right transverse pelvic, left transverse trunk, cap and bottom. Does that make sense? The machine is trying to twist your trunk to your left. If the machine is trying to twist your trunk to your left, I don't need muscles that are trying to twist my trunk to the left. If I did, I'd slam the machine there. I need right transverse trunk rotators to work against the machine, trying to twist my trunk to the left. Does that make sense? This is going to help you identify who those muscles are. The machine is trying to twist my trunk to the left. I don't need left transverse, I need right transverse. Think of it like this. The machine is trying to do this, so therefore I need muscles that are. It's just instead of moving rib to hip, those muscles are moving hip to rib. Who are the right transverse? Left external and internal right. You see why I'm being honest? Somebody said $100 if you could tell me the obliques in 5 seconds, I'd be like, give me money. Because I haven't figured it out, it takes time. But we could also see why it's easier to just default to core. I see it. There may be cases where we have to, as therapists, rehabilitation specialists, as health coaches, personal trainers, there's imbalances. And we can't just metaphorically spray both sides the same because we may need to not specifically target certain internals and externals, so we have to know what's being worked and when they're working and how they're working. There's going to be times where we have to emphasize concentric, times we emphasize eccentrics, times we emphasize isometrics.
Just clarifying this image.
The machine is trying to spin him to his left. So therefore, he needs muscles that are pulling him back to the right. He needs right transverse trunk rotators for this exercise. It's not easy. It's not. But that's why we practice. That's why we practice. And again, I'll leave it at this. We always open our bottles by moving the cap. But we can't open it by moving the bottle. Our bodies can move because of the cap. But a lot of times we move because of the bottle, and we have to be able to recognize it. All right, guys, you have a good one.